Hello and welcome to episode 18 of the Note to File podcast, a collection of interviews, best practices, and candid commentary for clinical research sites. Our guest today is Esthefany Jabbour. She started her research career in early 2013, working in regulatory affairs at a site level. In the last few years, she's gained a lot of experience in multiple roles at a site level, varying from clinical research coordinator to chief operations officer. In her role as COO at a research site, she's overseen site network operations, recruitment, training, business development, day-to-day structure, and management of a research site. Recently, she started her own multi-specialty research clinic in Boca Raton, Florida, Forward Clinical Research. In this episode, we discuss the challenges of creating a new research site. So if you're somebody who's early on in your career, maybe you're considering breaking out on your own, starting your own site, I think this is a great episode to kind of highlight some of the challenges involved. Without further ado, Esthefany Jabbour. All right, Esthefany, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you doing?
Good. How are you? Thank you for having me.
Not too bad. It is, what is today? September 4th?
Yeah, Friday.
And it is Friday. It's a relatively hot day here in Oklahoma, and you're probably a lot hotter in Florida.
Oh yeah, we're melting over here, but hopefully it ends soon, even though it's all your...
I was gonna say, it doesn't ever really end too much out there, does it?
No, I mean, sometimes it gets a little bit cooler around November, December, but not that much cooler.
Right on. Yeah, we get all the extremes of weather here, so that's one of the real fun parts about living in the middle of the country.
Yeah.
Well, very good. As I start with all my guests, I was hoping you could tell us a little bit about how you first got into clinical research. I find that's always kind of a nice place to start.
Of course it is. So I started very similar to how other started in clinical research by accident. I was working my way through college and I landed an entry-level position at a research site. I had no idea what research even was. It was mostly like administrative, regulatory position. And I eventually got trained on regulatory affairs and I was able to master that very quickly. And I kind of learned the business part of it very quickly. And I recall the exact moment that my former boss asked me if I was interested in clinical research. And I just remember he asked me, "Are you interested in learning about clinical research?" And without hesitation, I said, "Yes, of course." And I remember he just grabbed a big sheet of paper and started drawing out everything from the sponsors to the IRBs to the sites and kind of laid it out for me. And it was interesting. I was just amazed at everything and how big things could be. There's so much to do within research. And ever since then, I've been in the field and it's been quite a journey.
Yeah, I think like you say, that seems to be a very common story. People kind of fall into it. And, I find as I try to train new coordinators, just trying to explain the sort of breadth and depth of everything involved in clinical research is challenging because you're right. It's a huge industry that I don't think is very well understood outside of the industry. So yeah, it can be a little overwhelming when you first kind of jump in. So sounds like luckily you were able to sort of get a full education across maybe just the one site that you were at. Is that fair? They were cross-training you and able to sort of get you up to speed across all the different kind of areas there.
Yeah, definitely. I thought it was easier to start off with regulatory. You kind of learn about the IRBs and the regulations and, what's necessary to start off in clinical trials. So that was a good start. And then from there, kind of trained as a study coordinator, phlebotomist, data management, and eventually just, I was cross-trained on everything, which is good to have as a site because you have backups for your other staffs that are not on site on certain days. So that was a wonderful experience. And they were a pretty large site. They had many studies. They focused a lot on oncology, hematology. They did a lot of cancer trials. So it was pretty good experience.
Yeah. And again, that seems to be a recurring theme. The more broad and diverse sort of background and experience you can get, I think the better off you are. And I know we and others talk about, the importance of sort of being able to generalize within the field. I feel like a lot of people sort of start not unlike yourself. Like you sort of start as a specialist, then you become a generalist, and then a lot of people end up going back to, being a specialist again, I think, in the end, but also having a better understanding of the full context and are still able to do all the other pieces that are involved. So I think that, again, that's super useful. Was that an independent site?
It was an independent site.
Yeah, I'd say that makes a lot of sense that they were smart of them to make sure people are properly cross-trained. So again, I love to see when people are able to get that experience in one place, not have to, jump all over to, get all the years of experience it might otherwise take to really learn the industry in a more well-rounded way.
Yeah, definitely. And I definitely think that being a generalist in research kind of helps you and gives you more options and kind of allows you to decide on what you want to do and, what path you would like to take, whether it's site side or sponsor side. So you definitely learn a lot.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I think once you really know how things work on a very intimate level, it really opens you up to a lot of different possibilities from there. Even if you weren't necessarily a specialist in that area, I think that, again, having the full understanding is ridiculously valuable and not super prevalent, at least in a lot of the sites I've seen. You've got more things sort of siloed and isolated in different ways. So yeah, again, that's really can't overstate how important that is. So tell me a little bit about where that brings you today.
So for the last 2 years, I've been developing my own clinical research site, Forward Clinical Research. It's an independent clinical research site, and we're here in Boca Raton, Florida, and we've really been focusing on advancing medicine and conducting clinical trials, different multi-therapeutic specialties. So it's been my focus for the last 2 years. We recently launched at a physician's site, and we're doing cardiovascular now, and eventually we'll expand to multi-specialty. So it's been quite a journey, and I'm more than happy to kind of have my own site to work at and do things a little bit differently based on my experience.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, and congratulations on that. I'm well aware of all the complications and complexity and challenges that are involved in setting up your own site. And it sounds like, I did almost exactly the same thing. I started in cardiology and was able to, slowly branch out across other therapeutic areas. Are you integrated inside a physician's office? Yeah.
For now, yes. So we've integrated into a cardiovascular practice. It's a pretty large practice. There's 7 physicians. They're all board certified. They're interventional cardiologists as well. So it's a big opportunity and it's great working with them. But we're starting off, so we have a few studies and we're hoping to have some more in the next few months.
Yeah, that sounds very much like where I'm at right now. Interventional cardiologists, they also have a outpatient surgery center here. So we should talk more offline about study opportunities together.
Of course.
Very cool. So are you, do you have employees or is it just you at the site right now?
So I have someone that's a research assistant that's part-time, kind of just help as needed. But most of the time it's just myself. Do the budgets, contracts, regulatories, startups, blood draws, patients, the whole thing. It's just been me. So it's kind of been like a skeleton crew for a few years until we kind of stabilize ourselves a little bit. And then, we can add to the team.
Yeah, I think that's important for people to realize. I was basically alone for the first 9 or 10 months of starting out at a site. And I did the same thing. I did beginning to end, drew blood, saw all the patients, recruited all the patients, everything there is to do. So I think that's, again, something important people need to realize when they come in is, as we know, the revenue cycle is pretty long in clinical research. And that's even assuming you get a trial right off the bat, which I think most people don't have that luxury. So, in the beginning, you're probably only going to be able to afford your own work. So yeah, I have a lot of respect for people who can sort of grind through that difficult period. It sounds like you've got some help, which is a huge advantage. So you're even a little bit ahead of the curve, I'd say, at this point.
Yeah, so I tried really when I started the site, I really tried to do a lot of the work prior to launching the site, like before developing a site relationship with the physicians. So I kind of had everything developed before, like the SOPs, the site management, the structure, the business development, the networking of it prior to reaching out to physicians. So that helped a lot because I know some other site owners, they'll first start off with physicians and then start from there, like their SOPs and then developing their sites. But before I approached the physicians, I really had a site developed, the whole structure and functional part of it, just so I can follow, my research sites, values, and models throughout the whole journey. So that was really important for me and really helped me a lot. So as soon as I had the relationship with the physicians, I think we had a site selection visit 3 months later. So that was really quick on our side.
Yeah, no, I would say that's perfect. That's by all accounts, that would be a success to be able to get a site selection visit that soon. I think even for me, I found in the beginning it was sort of chicken or the egg. Do you go find a physician? Do you try to drum up some study opportunities first? Which it's hard to do either one sort of without the other. Obviously, it's easier to find a physician, I think, but sometimes, in my experience, you don't want to leave a physician on the hook without something to put in front of them for too long.
Exactly.
So it's tough to go find a physician and say, well, I've got some study opportunities maybe over the next few months. That can become an awkward, conversation when you're trying to build trust with a new physician. So yeah, I like that you tried to think through things as much as you could. I think for better or worse, I've sometimes had to take the opposite approach and sort of adjust as I move, just knowing that there's a lot you don't know, so find a great doctor. You may not be able to find them a study for 3 to 6 months, if things aren't hot, maybe in that area, if they don't have experience. I find that to be a real challenge when you're sort of starting out.
Yeah, that's true. I think the most important thing is believing in yourself and believing in your company, your site. And then once you have that foundation, then it's easier to convince others to believe in your company and believe in your system and how you're going to do your site. So that was definitely something, my approach at least for the physicians. So that worked out.
Yeah, and I also think it pays just to be upfront with a physician and say, we're to a large degree, you're sort of a victim of the, what the market's doing. So if there aren't any cardiology studies going on, then it may be some time. So I think being upfront about that is, pays. You don't want to necessarily oversell to the physicians that you're trying to get on board. But you're right, and something that you mentioned that probably helps out a lot is that you did have resources, other site owners or other people at site levels that you can network and connect with. That I think helps build some confidence in what you're doing as well.
Yeah, that definitely worked out for me.
Very good. What are some challenges, other challenges you faced as you've sort of moved throughout the process of getting up and going?
Yeah, so I think the biggest challenge has really been working independently on my own as a site owner. I've always thrived working well as a team with a company. I've had leadership positions where I've worked on my own projects on my own time, but within a group or a team. So it was definitely a challenge starting my own research site independently. I've really had no direct guidance or mentoring throughout the whole process. So every day and every moment was a challenge in accepting I was independent and had to make these important choices on my own. And over the last few months, I've really allowed this to be an opportunity to overcome my biggest challenge.
Yeah, and that speaks to just the bigger concept of being an entrepreneur. Especially in the beginning where you're on your own. You're everything. You're marketing, you're business development, you're the coordinator, you're accounting sometimes, you're the whole kit and caboodle. So that's challenging for sure. And then especially when you're dealing in such a sort of, I don't know, I think that what we work in is a fairly uncertain market. You don't necessarily always know what's coming down the pipeline or what you can get in on. And even after that, you don't always know how well your trials are going to enroll. So that I think adds another layer of just sort of, I don't know, anxiety on what we do. So it's particularly challenging, just on top of being an entrepreneur in the first place.
Yeah, I agree. You definitely have to follow the trends and keep up with the research on the latest drugs and what's going on to kind of succeed in this business and as a site owner.
Yeah, I'd say it's not necessarily for the faint of heart. You got to, like you said, you have to put a lot of faith in yourself and what you're doing. And again, it all kind of ties back together. If you've spent your time becoming as much of a generalist as you can, understanding how the business works and all the different sort of moving parts that are involved, then you're setting yourself up for success at that point.
Exactly. That's how I see it as well.
Awesome. What's a best practice that you'd share with other sites?
Well, one of the best practices I can share is to really focus on your company values as a research site. If you're a site owner building a brand or a site and you're implementing your company values, you follow them. They define you as a leader and they differentiate your company from others. So then eventually you realize that you're impacting other patients and sponsors and in making a difference in research by focusing on why you started in the first place. So that's been very important for me, just focusing on my company values and why I started doing this. I've always had a passion for research. And I think every day it just continues to grow. Every day is a learning curve. Every day you're learning something's new, and you just have to learn how to deal with everything.
Yeah, again, I think that's a super sort of unseen thing. You've got to be able to sort of roll with the punches and take what you see and adjust to it. And you're right, it's especially this early on, it's almost daily as you deal with different physicians or different sponsors, or as you start building a staff. To go back to what you said before, I think your company culture is really important. I've worked at sites that they're most interested in you being in the office from 8 to 5, and I'm trying to build a site where people have some flexibility in the work that they do. I mean, we all want to help patients. I think that's generally pretty commonly accepted. We're all here to try to help patients get the best care that they can and advance drug development. Also while ensuring the highest quality data and ensuring patient safety. But to go beyond that, how you really run your site, how you treat your staff, and your company culture can make a big difference in the success of your company overall.
I completely agree. I think leadership is a very important key here, and in your company values is just having great leadership and building a great team along with your company values will really help you succeed along with your team. You're allowing them to succeed. So it's very important to focus on that, and really the leadership is the most important thing for me. It took me a really long time, maybe 2 years. I was developing my leadership skills. I was focusing on kind of working independently, making sure I have the right structure just to follow something and, give me some type of meaning at the end of the day. So that was very important for me.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. There's a lot that goes into, leadership aside from process, having emotional intelligence and, treating your employees the way that, you want them to be treated. And again, you really can go down the rabbit hole when it comes to building your culture and sort of the approach that you take with your business as a whole. So I'm very encouraged by seeing people like you and other people I've talked to that are striking out on their own and, have an emphasis on company culture and, trying to build something that's better than what we have now. So, that's something I've loved about doing this podcast is that I've had the opportunity to talk to people like you who are, we're out there doing things that are, a little bit different. And I think that will have an impact on the industry as we all continue to sort of build out these different networks, whether it's, together or not. But ultimately, I think the sort of cumulative effect of good people out there trying to build good brands and do good work is going to have a big downstream effect on the way the industry works as time goes by.
Yeah, I agree. It's part of innovation.
Yeah, for sure. Which is not without its headaches, especially right now with the pandemic and all the different sort of interesting things that's brought to light. So it's a really fun time, to be in research. I think, even though it's a little chaotic right now.
Yeah, no, you know what? I think this is the highlight of our careers as researchers is this pandemic. This is something we all want to be a part of, especially the vaccine trials and any other COVID trials they have on clinicaltrials.gov right now going on, which they're like increasing each day. It's a highlight of our career. This is something that is part of our research career. We want to be part of this pandemic and the development of drugs. So this is probably the best time for us right now.
Yeah, I mean, this is why we're here. I mean, I think we're going to be able to look back and see the direct effect that we had on, on the pandemic, on public health, on the whole thing. So yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think it's there couldn't be a sort of cooler time to be involved in clinical research.
Yeah, it's awesome.
What are some resources that you use? I'm always interested in hearing about any specific tools people use. I think there's such a broad array of things that can kind of be brought to the table across clinical research, and especially across opening your own site. So tell us a little bit about any resources that you might use.
So there's a lot of resources out there, you're right, but I started using just my free resources as much as possible. The biggest and most achievable one has been social connections and social networking. When I was looking for a group of physicians to join my team, I was door knocking, emailing, sending letters by mail, calling every day, following up. I did that as much as possible to get in touch with someone from the practice. And then I've also used social media a lot. I've reached out to people on LinkedIn. I think that's a great resource. And another big resource that I use is joining networks like SOCRA. I have another one called HBA, which is Healthcare Businesswomen's Association. And this one has really helped me a lot because it's within a district, so you kind of join the organization, and it's a lot of businesswomen who have leadership positions within an organization like pharma companies or anything in healthcare. And this has helped me a lot with my business development and gaining more trials and that connection with others. So I've really utilized a lot of those memberships as much as possible.
Yeah, and that's a great point. I think sometimes the best resources aren't necessarily clinical research specific, especially again if you're trying to really build a business. So I was applied and accepted to a startup accelerator, which was huge for me as a trying to learn business, aside from clinical research. So yeah, tools like that are huge. I mean, even for just self-development outside of clinical research specifically. But again, I think it makes you a better, businesswoman or just a better leader if you can take those skills and kind of bring them over to what you do.
Yeah.
And to go back to what you said before as well, I think that really highlights, if you're door knocking and emailing and calling and sending letters, that's what you have to do. I mean, you really can't ever be satisfied or content with what you've got. I mean, obviously you can do it strategically, but like we talked about before, you need to be where the action is. So if if a therapeutic area is hot and you're not in it, you got to get there. And that's what it takes. I mean, it's a hustle and a grind to, sometimes track these people down and be able to pitch to them and, getting your foot in the door. It takes a lot of persistence. So I think that's, again, something that, people need to keep in mind as they're considering starting their own sites or kind of striking out independently.
Yeah, I agree. And it's a long process. I know some people get discouraged if they don't get any responses from sponsor sites, but you have to just be persistent and consistent in this business. It's definitely a long journey. I've also utilized clinicaltrials.gov a lot. It's probably my favorite website, and I use it often. I'm always on it, trying to see the newest research trials they have posted and contacting everyone on there. I use it often.
Yeah, and that's a completely valid way to get started. I mean, you don't necessarily have to sign up for, expensive business development consultants
Completely free.
Right, yeah, completely free as long as you're willing to put in the work to scour it and send emails, make phone calls, track people down. I mean, you can absolutely get started just by using clinicaltrials.gov. It may be, a little more challenging or take you more time, but it's absolutely a legitimate way to get started without costing you anything other than the time you put into it.
Yeah. And I know there's different vendors now that have, you can kind of utilize to look for studies for you or CTMS companies. But I didn't start off doing that just because I kind of was a skeleton crew. So I was doing everything myself. I just utilized my free resources.
Yeah. And again, that's something that you have to do in the beginning. And I did the same thing. I'm able now to, I do utilize some business development help. I use the CTMS, but we had to build to that. It's not necessary. It can make your life easier. But you got to do what you got to do in the beginning. So every free resource that you can use is on the table.
Yeah, it works out.
Awesome. Well, thank you again so much for coming on today. Where can people find you online?
So you can find me on LinkedIn. I use that daily. Or my Instagram page. It's / clinical research. And my LinkedIn is my name is Esthefany Jabbour.
Very good. Again, thank you for coming on. I'll put your contact information in our show notes. And again, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
As always, thank you for listening to the Note to File podcast. Please check us out at notetofilepodcast.com for full episode transcripts, show notes, and contact information for our guests. Thanks again.